distribute. Oh, that's that word I can't ever say. I'm going to change the colour of the grey, putting the green in. No.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
I'm so...
It's a totally different colour.
Does
I say totally different. It's more beige than this. Is more like a mid-grey. And Bryony is already if that's the same ball of yarn, I'll eat my hat.
And it's a lovely pink hat. We wouldn't want that to happen.
It's finished now. We're obviously into August. What was that?
It's my finished sign.
Right.
Like you're scaling it up. I found my Sandy.
Yeah.
And I'll always be hopelessly devoted to you.
Oh,
you know
kitschy.
where it would exist. At the gates of hell itself, yes, IKEA.
IKEA.
You're the one that I want.
Seriously. All right, we could carry on. Oh, so now it's hot fuchsia. Oh, be careful with this one, it's deadly.
You look like a beauty school dropout.
Oh well.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring my favourite colourways.
Yes.
We know how much you love this show. Oh yes. In fact, we know how much you love this show. We've actually extended the run this year.
We have.
Today. Now, it wouldn't have been today because we would have filled the year slightly differently. We'd have moved things around a touch. But only 6 episodes were planned. But fear not. After a national outcry in January,
Yeah.
much wailing and gnashing of teeth, we've added 3 episodes.
Yeah.
3 more My Favourite Colourways to the run. So, today's a very exciting day because whilst it would have been the end, and certain things happen like it was the end, like you finishing the wrist ticklers.
I know. Yeah. I have, and I'll show you those later.
Very exciting. There is more to come.
Yeah.
So very, very exciting. Because, I mean, it's just wonderful that you guys love that series so much. We absolutely love making it for you.
We do.
And we're delighted, absolutely delighted to add 3 extra shows to the run. But my goodness, we've got so much more than My Favourite Colourways.
Yes.
How about a huge prize draw?
Oh, yes, we do. We do. Our Christmas in July is over. So I've got a prize to give out. We've drawn a winner.
Amazing.
And we've got a prize. So we will be doing that later.
But there's also just some wonderful projects because the contrast colour in My Alexander is finally in.
Oh, yay.
Yes.
I haven't really seen it.
Very exciting.
That's very exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, there's a weird thing been going on with the grey. So much...
Change the colour of the grey, putting the green in. No.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that.
Well, That makes sense to me.
That's great. I was gazing at it thinking, oh my goodness, have I added another ball? And then I'm thinking, I can't have done, because it's the same ball. I've never stopped knitting with it. So unless
it can absolutely do that, can't it?
Isn't that fun?
The colour you put with it.
That's so cool. We'll be finding out about that later. There's also some epic What's Off Your Needles.
Yes.
Which is very exciting.
Yes, and I've got a new, very fabulous cast on.
Yes, absolutely. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think that you would agree, well, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, but I think we live in a technologically advanced world.
Yes, comparatively speaking to where we were, for example. Yeah, absolutely.
Things have moved forward. Let's just take the Apollo 11 moon landings, for example. Yeah. We now have calculators with a faster processing power than the whole of Apollo 11's ship.
That's amazing.
That got them all the way to the moon and back.
Yeah.
So the question that I ask you is this. Why is it that we still haven't cracked pans that you use in the oven?
Pans that you use in the oven.
Why is it that they still like rust and like bits fall off and things stick and they're rubbish? But the thing that frustrates me the most, and you as well, is why is it that when you're getting out one of those pans, it's louder than the rockets of Apollo 11 taking off from Cape Canaveral, or where did they take off from?
Cape Canaveral, I believe.
Right. Hopefully it was Cape Canaveral.
Do they? I think it's Cape Canaveral, isn't it?
If you don't believe me how loud it is finding one of these pans, just take a listen to this. Yes, we caught that. Thankfully, when I was filming those bits for my favourite Colourways, we don't actually need the audio. So, it was absolutely fine. But can you believe how noisy that was?
When you say a pan, you don't mean a pan. This is why I've been looking confused.
Yeah, sorry.
He doesn't mean a pan. He means a baking tray.
Baking tray.
What we would call a baking tray, baking sheet.
Yeah. People have tried to create other things, haven't they? To cook things in, like those plastic things. Do you remember when you cooked?
Like a silicone one.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I can't stand silicone. Weird. You can get like silicone...
It's for cakes, isn't it?
Cupcake cases. They just freak me out.
And they come out weird.
They come out weird.
Yeah.
I don't like those. I have tried them and I don't like them. So I'm a very old-fashioned metal. I don't know what sort of metal they are, but they're, metal baking trays.
We've tried cheap.
We have.
We've tried expensive.
We have.
And the same thing happens with all of them. Those ones that we've got at the moment are just hilarious because they're called Circulon.
Circulon. I don't
Sounds
know
like a character from Star Trek.
I don't know if it's Prestige or I can't remember.
And they've got all these knobbles on them, so non-stick.
Yeah, they've got like ridges that are meant to be non-stick.
But then the coating came off because something did stick, and now everything sticks to the holes in the coating.
So I end up putting on like a non-stick foil onto the tray just because it's such a chore to clean it afterwards.
Yes.
And we don't use abrasive cleaners either.
No.
We use scrubbies that are actually made of cotton. They're brilliant.
They are really good.
They're really good, but they're made of cotton. So then, they're not harsh, scrubby things either.
No.
I don't know, maybe the perfect baking tray just does not exist. And I have spent a lot of money on baking trays in the past.
Or maybe it does, and maybe someone out there knows.
Maybe
this is the whole reason why I'm saying you could solve the problem for what I'm guessing is a lot of people. We've come up with all sorts of sort of plans in our mind, haven't we, as to what we would do ideally, like having, what did you say, having slots?
It's the storage of all these metal things. They make such a racket in your cupboards when you're getting them out.
And the one you want's always at the bottom.
The ones you want is always at the bottom. And I think a system where you put them in a vertical rack would work.
Yes.
As long as that vertical rack wasn't also metal. It'd have to be like a coated metal.
Oh, wood. Wood.
Yeah, wood.
Well, wooden units, that's normally how, when you open a cupboard, there's normally a wood or MDF.
Yeah, I suppose.
Anything like that.
But any system where you could slot them vertically, and I'm sure something exists, but, I'm saving all this for my dream kitchen.
Where it would exist. At the gates of hell itself, yes, IKEA.
It would probably be an IKEA.
The problem is, I ain't going in there, because as long-term watchers will know, the last time I went in there, I literally had a panic attack. Because he was like, I can't get out. How do you get out? I don't know how to get out. Because it's like some mysterious zone, isn't it, where... Yes.
It reminds me a bit of... Do you remember the adventure game?
Yes.
I don't know if it reminds me a bit of that.
Don't tread on that one.
Yeah.
Go on.
Get jumped away. But no, I think...
It's the vortex.
And it also... The vortex.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And wasn't there like a talking aspidistra or something?
Yes.
And it also needs to be really at eye level, because our cupboard that stores all these things is down at the bottom. So you have to lean down. Most of the times I have to get down on my hands and knees to get a baking tray out. The other day I said to you, I just can't go down there. Can you just get me a tray out, because I just can't face it.
If you have a solution, please let us know in the comments below.
If you're got a joiner in your family or something who's created you the most amazing storage system.
Or maybe you just have a solution which is something you can go and buy.
Well, that would be better.
That would be the idea.
That would be, because you couldn't send round your cousin or your husband or your whatever, could you, to help us? No.
Now look, it's fair to say, at least we try here at Bakery Bears HQ to be a beacon of light in what can seem like quite a bleak world at times. And speaking personally, 32 years ago, my life felt about as bleak as it possibly could. It was the first time in my life, actually, where I sort of realised that life could be pretty rubbish. It was Christmas Day, 1990, and my dad decided that would be a good day to leave my mum. The kicker was, it was also a day before her 50th birthday.
Yeah.
Now, really, from then through to January, it was horrific. And like I say, it was 14, 15, 16, I think for all young people, it's the key moments. It's the moments where you become an adult. You learn the things which are going to see you through life. Now, the funny thing is, there was a sort of silver lining to this disaster, because it turned out my dad wasn't a very nice guy anyway, and we were actually quite a bit better. Well, not quite a bit. We were a lot better off without him. At that moment, things felt terrible. But there was one thing that saw me through. Do you know what that was, Kay?
I'm not sure.
From January 1991 to July 1991, I wore out 2 video cassette tapes of Grease.
I don't think we can talk about it. Oh.
Yes.
Don't. It's just too much. I can't bear it. Yeah. You probably all know why Dan's referenced Grease. Unfortunately and really sadly, Olivia Newton-John just passed away.
He's rubbish.
Ugh.
But she...
Let's just have a moment.
I think if you see some of the comments that people have made about her...
Yeah. Oh, God, I need a tissue. This is terrible.
It was really that film that taught me that, because I felt so bad, and seeing that film and it just sort of being just so amazingly lovely, and it was in that sort of 6 months that I just thought, I'm going to be the beacon of light.
Oh.
And it sort of set me on the path. Well, it did. It totally set me on the path that, you know, I've ended up on in life, which is...
What are we like? Oh my goodness, life it can just be so tough, can't it? And you know,
well, it can, but it's people like her.
Stupid cancer yet again. You know.
I remember when she was diagnosed.
I think she suffered.
In the 90s. She was diagnosed in the 90s.
Yeah, she suffered for a long time.
The thing is that if you read about her, though, she didn't suffer, not outwardly.
No, yeah.
She was just
suffers the wrong word.
An example to all of us.
Yeah. Ugh.
But what we all have to do now...
Do you know what? Go and put the film on, everyone, and...
Exactly.
You know, it's about celebrating, isn't it? And I know it's really sad, but it's also, I think, just a great time to sort of celebrate what that whole...
Absolutely. You know. I mean, my mum said to me recently, and she said she wants me to make sure that this happens. She said she doesn't want anybody to be sad at her funeral. I had a long conversation with my mum, and she was saying, you know, that the most important thing is that people remember her with happiness, and then, you know, go forward and be happy and live life to the full. And I know that that's what Olivia Newton-John would want as well.
Yeah.
So we all have to shine a bit brighter now.
Yes.
We have to pick up the slack that she's left. So that's what we're going to do. Oh, yes.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
My goodness.
My eyes yet again.
I can remember like it was yesterday. It's sort of cool in a way to be able to remember, you know, so clearly. I think it's when something totally rubbish happens. And, you know, I just remember so clearly just watching that and just thinking, that's what so silly. That's what I want my life to be. And we've said this before. I think we said this a few years ago. And that is, your life can be whatever you want it to be. And that's what I did from that day on. You know, and if you're that sort of shining beacon of light, then it radiates sort of loveliness, and then you get it back tenfold. It's just marvellous. And, you know, she's an example of that, because the comments that so many people have made about her are amazing. And, you know, let's all do that. Let's pick up the slack.
You know, there's so many other people in the world, isn't there, that are like that.
Oh, there is. The only reason why I have spoken about this at all is because of that happening to me 32 years ago, and literally that is the moment, watching that film, that set me on the path.
Absolutely. There are moments in your life, aren't there, like that? And
I found my Sandy.
Yeah.
And I'll always be hopelessly devoted to you.
Oh, that's very sweet. I wish I'd had her figure, but there you go.
You're the one that I want.
All right. We could carry on.
You look like a beauty school dropout.
Oh well.
That's enough of that.
Enough, yes.
Let's get on with some shining beacons of light.
Yes.
Today we're actually broadcasting not from our usual place. We're actually in Benidorm.
Oh gosh, it's really hot again. You know, we thought it all calmed down. Past few weeks it's been normal, and then no.
More than normal. It's been positively English.
Been absolutely English and just absolutely amazing.
So we went from the hottest temperatures I've ever known in my life, like 39 degrees, 40 degrees.
Ridiculous.
We were getting messages from viewers from places like Florida saying it's hotter with you today than it is here.
Yeah.
I hope you'll be okay. Thank you all so much for those lovely messages.
Yeah.
Now today it is not as hot as Florida.
Not as hot.
But it's still
29, 30 today. Yes. So it's still really hot for us, you know, and
up until that hot spell earlier on this year, this would have been like,
that is true. I suppose that's the only positive, isn't it?
The grease.
This still feels
to this situation
not as hot as it did for those few days.
Our perspective has changed forever.
That is, absolutely, that's true. But it's still horribly sunny. You know, it's literally sunny from like 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, through till 9 o'clock at night. What is that all about? I cannot deal with so much sun.
Do you know what would be lovely?
It does something to my brain.
It would be lovely in a way to have the constitution of an Egyptian, because when I went to Egypt, and it was probably the same.
Egyptian people have like woolly hats on and scarves in this weather.
When I visited Egypt, and you went in the summer though, you crazy person.
Yeah, I did.
I went in the winter.
Do that.
I went in the winter, and I'm in like short shorts and tiny t-shirts, and they're there in like body warmers and full hats and like everything. I'm like,
crazy. It's what you get used to. It's what you get used to.
It's your constitution. That's the trick.
Yeah, we don't have an Egyptian constitution.
Look,
that's tricky to say.
Talk about an emotional roller coaster of an opening to this show.
I don't know what you're doing to me today, honestly. I need a cup of tea. I might have to make a cup of tea in the break, everyone.
Enough of this, because there's too many lovely things to see. So without further ado, it's time for me to ask Kate Jones, what's on your needles?
Right, I've got a new sock cast on, and it's glorious, let me tell you. So, and it's in a bag that I made years and years and years ago, and I've never really used it, and I couldn't tell you why, because it's lovely. But when I wanted to start this project, the theme of it, I just instantly thought about this bag, and I went running upstairs. It was in my second stash of bags. I have like one stash of bags which is behind me in a cupboard that I use regularly, and then I have a secondary stash which I don't use as much, and they're in a cupboard upstairs, and I thought, that's in that cupboard upstairs, I'm going to go and find it. So I dug it out and I showed it to Bryony. I said, look at this bag that I'm putting these socks in because they're for her, and she went, oh, it's perfect. Unfortunately it doesn't have Snow White on, but it's got loads of fairy tale princesses on. Well, not even princesses, fairy tale characters, let's say, because this is Little Red Riding Hood, and then that's, wrong way. That one, is that Alice in Wonderland? Yes, that's Alice in Wonderland, and here's Jasmine, and then we've got Little Mermaid and Belle. And I'm sure Snow White was on it as well. She was, because look, there's some of the Seven Dwarfs coming in there, so I've missed it on that next piece. But I made this years ago, and it was just perfect for what's inside, because as you know, I think I've mentioned, Bryony and I have been watching Once Upon a Time recently. We're actually on the final season now, and if anybody's watched this, the final season's a bit weird, isn't it? Because at the end of the 6th season, that's when they thought it was going to end, and it ends in a great way. It was brilliant, and if it had ended there, perfect. But then a 7th season came along, but it's completely different. It's not got the main characters in. It's got some of them, but not really the sort of key characters. And it's totally different sort of worlds and realms and stories. But Bryony wanted to watch it because she wanted to see the thing out. And we're enjoying it. We're halfway through now, but it's not as good as the other 6 seasons. But anyway, I wanted to make her a pair of socks that were inspired by her favourite character in Uat, as we call it. Is that what everybody calls it? I don't know. Bryony calls it Uat, so that's what I say. Her favourite character is Rumple, or Mr. Gold. So Rumpelstiltskin, Mr. Gold, and it's the character played by Robert Carlyle. And she absolutely loves him. She loves him as Mr. Gold, but she loves him even more as Rumpelstiltskin. So I was thinking about that, and I was looking in my stash, and I found a skein of yarn that actually I dyed about a year ago, and I dyed it for a friend, a gift for a friend. And of course, I didn't just dye one, I put 2 in a pot, so I got one. And I did give this yarn a name that was associated with my friend. But the colour of it, just when I looked at it and I showed it to Bryony, she went, oh, that's Mr. Gold. So I said, yeah, that's Mr. Gold. So I then went and dyed up a mini that I thought went with it, as like, when he's Rumpelstiltskin, he wears sort of stuff that's like quite kind of grimy colours, if you like, sort of deep greens and deep reds and, you know, those sorts of colours. So I dyed up a mini that I thought went with it for the heels and toes, and I'm knitting a pair of socks. I didn't want to just knit a plain pair, I wanted to put in a stitch pattern that reminded me of Rumple. And when I look at Rumple, you know, if you know him, the character again, he's got quite long hair and it's sort of wavy and sort of a bit all over the place. And I was thinking about that, and I was just looking through some stitch dictionaries, and I came across this stitch pattern, which I've seen loads of times before, and I have actually seen this stitch pattern used in hats, and I'm not sure if socks, maybe, I don't know. It's just knits and pearls, but it's so effective, and it just reminds me of him. I'll show you the yarns first of all, and then I'll show you the sock. So the yarn that reminded me of Rumple that I dyed up for my friend is this one. Can you see why? I mean, if you know Mr. Gold or Rumple, hopefully that might make you think of him too. So it's this gorgeous deep golden colour with specks of brown and like a sort of, well, it's mainly brown, so brown and a rusty sort of brown. Just lovely, and it's on a sparkle base. And then I dyed up this green. I think I wrote down what I did for this, but this started out a completely different colour, and then I layered colours on top to create this kind of olivey sort of colour. And the two together just make me think of Rumple. I'll show you the sock now, and you'll be able to see the stitch pattern. One of the great things about this stitch pattern is it's based on a rib, so it's really nice and stretchy. But also, because of the nature of it, you can't actually see the jog at the start of the round, which I think is brilliant. So here's the sock. Oh, can you see the stitch pattern? Oh, isn't it pretty? I think it was called Wavy Rib in the Stitch Dictionary. And it's just knits and pearls. And the only thing with it, and I think the reason that I've kind of bypassed it before when I've been looking for stitch sort of inspiration, is it's a 16 stitch repeat. Now that's a sort of tricky number to work into lots of different sizes of sock. The stitch pattern itself, I don't know without, I mean, I haven't given it any thought, but I'm not sure there'll be any way of really adjusting it to make it fit different sizes. But it fits a 64 size perfectly. 4 repeats, perfect. And that's the size that I've been knitting anyway, so I thought I'm just going to use it. And it looks absolutely, I think, brilliant. So I've put in my butterfly heel, just because I'm loving that heel so much at the moment. It's, you know, it's quick, it's easy. Don't have to, and I was knitting this at a time where I was really enjoying the stitch pattern, and I got to the heel and I thought, oh, I don't know if I want to be bothered doing gusset decreases. So I just popped in the butterfly heel and it's perfect. And that, I think the green and the gold together, it's very autumnal, isn't it, as well, which is lovely. But I love how the yarn's knitting up. You see on the stocking stitch section, it's so pretty. And the stitch pattern is so lovely. It's amazing what you can do with knits and pearls, isn't it?
It really is. And
a 2x2 rib it flows seamlessly into the pattern as well.
That's great.
Just perfect.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll take it off and I'll show you just how sort of stretchy. When it's off...
Oh, is it super stretchy because it's ribbed?
Yeah, I mean, I might knit this one for you, actually.
Ooh,
because if you look how skinny that is when it's off the blocker, but then look how it stretches.
I want some.
Look how it stretches.
Can I have some?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you like knitting them?
I do.
Oh, I know. All my socks like that.
Well, I'm having issues with yours. I'm going to talk about the socks for you. So I'm having issues with socks for you. So maybe the solution is to knit you a pair of these, because the stitch pattern is so lovely. Oh, I'm saying that, but it wouldn't fit a 72. I'd need to give it some thought, because...
Don't worry.
The 16 stitch pattern, I just don't know how I would adjust it.
Yeah.
There might be a way. I'll have a think about it, because it would need to be adjusted to an 18 stitch.
Yeah.
Which is difficult, isn't it, just to adjust it by 2 stitches. But there might be a way, you know, I might be able to think of something.
Don't worry.
I'm thinking too much about it now, aren't I? But yeah, I mean, it's so, and I just love how it's knitting up. I didn't write down the recipe, unfortunately, for this, and I did it a year ago. I have checked, but I obviously at the time...
You did what a year ago?
This yarn, I dyed it a year ago.
Sorry. I thought you meant for the sock.
No, I dyed the yarn a year ago. I must have thought at the time I wanted it just to be a one-of-a-kind and an individual, because it was a special gift for a friend. So literally, I cannot remember what I did.
Do you know what the friend knitted hers into?
She's not knit it yet.
Oh, okay, she's still saving it.
But I have told her that I'm knitting this, and I sent her a photo, and I sent her a photo of the chart as well, just in case she wanted to knit a pair of socks as well in it.
Cool.
And I think she did say she was going to knit some socks, but I don't know whether she started knitting it yet.
Right.
But I'm just absolutely loving them. It's all I knit for about a week. Because I just was enjoying it so much. And it's fairly slow to knit. But I say that, you know, it's knits and pearls, so it's obviously slower than just stocking stitch. But it's not like annoying to knit, and it's not boring. It's, you know, and I kind of have memorised it to the point of all I need to do is look at what row I'm on and just remind myself on the chart, and I go, yeah, that's fine, I know what I'm doing now, and I'm away. So I do have to just look at each row. You don't get rest rows as such, every row is patterned. But again, I think I just enjoyed seeing the stitch pattern emerge so much that it was keeping me going. And now on the foot, you know, it's much easier, because all I'm doing is pattern obviously on the top of the foot and then plain on the back, and I'm not far away from finishing this first one, and Bryony loves them, so I'll do the green for the toe as well. I did dye up a couple of minis, so I've got the other one here, look. If you like green, I think you'd really like it. It's got lots of tones in it. So yeah, I'm absolutely loving these socks. I'm doing it on magic loop. The only thing is, this needle, I'm having issues with these Addies. Some of them are like it and some of them are not, and I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's an older needle as opposed to a newer needle, I'm not sure. But I'm using this needle. It smells terribly metally, and I noticed the other day after I've been knitting for a while, I had a black line on my finger here, and I thought, what's that? And I was like, I smelt my finger and it smelt of metal. So for whatever reason, it's making like, I don't know, what is that? I mean, something's coming off and making a mark on my finger. But it's not all of the Addies, but I do have some of these which are older needles. And I just wonder if the recipe for making them has changed or something. I don't know.
So do you think it's the older ones that are smelling? Or
I think it's the new ones.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure this one is a new one, because the packaging changed slightly.
Yeah. There's nothing worse. I don't want that. Yeah.
No, I don't want that either. And, you know, why would... I'm not absolutely certain it's that way.
Have you ever had a set of DPNs that smelt of metal?
No.
I haven't either. That's interesting, isn't it?
No. But I've never used Addie DPNs.
Right. So what DPNs do you use?
It's only Addie that I've ever smelt dodgy needles with.
Oh, so don't use Addie then?
But I like the cables, and I know it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. I mean, double points I use Chowgoo.
Yeah.
I use Knit Pro sometimes, and then I use sort of bamboo ones as well. Are they higher, I think? So yeah, I mean that's slightly irritating. I have to wash my hands as soon as I've sort of put my knitting down to get rid of the smell. You know, other than that, absolutely loving these socks. And you know, I've been working on these when we've been watching Once Upon a Time. We watch an episode while we're having lunch, and I eat my lunch and then do sort of half an hour knitting afterwards. So, loving those. Dan Jones.
Yes.
What's on your needles?
Look, it's the Alexander, and the contrast colours all the way in. And look at the difference.
Cool.
Look at the difference. It's like a different skein of grey. Look.
Yeah, I can see exactly what you mean. It looks sort of more beigey.
Shall I tell you?
Are you sure that's the same skein as underneath?
Look, that started there.
That's a different yarn.
It can't be.
But look, that colour's completely different. That colour is totally different, holding one against the other.
Well, first of all,
isn't the same yarn.
This is not very good viewing, so let's hold it up. So, I have not added a new skein of yarn.
What, from this bit to this bit?
I definitely started using that one there. I've got no idea down there, but that started there and it went right the way through. I've never broken it.
Well, this is very odd because that's a totally different colour, honey.
Well, also, how is it possible that I could have a different colour in the bag?
Well, not in the bag, not unless you've put in a different ball. But what I'm saying is, you can see the difference between this top triangle, let's say, and this bottom triangle, and then the rest of this grey.
The thing is, though,
and when I hold this against this grey, it's a totally different colour. I say totally different. It's more beige than this. Is more like a mid grey. If that's the same ball of yarn, I'll eat my hat.
And it's a lovely pink hat. We wouldn't want that to happen.
But you can see so clearly between this bit and this bit.
So what do we need to do then?
Well, I don't know. So I'll look on the inside and see if you've joined yarn at any point on that row. Just about the point. Just a couple of rows after you started knitting the green.
This is interesting to know, isn't it?
Hang on.
Yeah.
Do you spit splice?
Yeah, I do.
Right.
But
I'm thinking you spit spliced in the wrong yarn, honey. I think what's happened is you've run out of that grey.
Yeah.
You've gone to your cupboard upstairs where you've got some yarns of Let Lopi. You've pulled out what you think looks like the same yarn, and it's not.
Right.
And you've spit spliced it.
Right. I mean, if I just carried on in this at the top, because it is like right on the point where it's like a fade.
Oh, he's now saying.
Well, no, I'm just saying if.
I wouldn't want you to rip it out because you've got all decreases.
How bad? I don't think that looks that bad because it comes.
You could say it was deliberate, couldn't you?
If it came here,
halfway through
it would look truly awful.
Yeah.
But because it's like the green has made a change in the grey.
Well, I suppose we could justify it like that, couldn't we?
Could we? Could we?
What do you think, everyone? What do you think you should do?
Should we make this?
I think we've sleuthed it. I think we've sleuthed it, and I think that's exactly what's happened.
So the point, though, is this: should we make it like a viewer poll?
I don't think, because you're decreasing, aren't you? Oh, ripping back. No. I can't even think about it. Ripping back in colour work with decreases.
And if you're going to carry on, you have to carry on with this.
Yes.
Yes.
At the end, and so hopefully you'd have enough in that ball. There should be, shouldn't there?
Yeah. Well, I'm decreasing massively right now.
Yeah. You're the one that's going to wear this. So at the end of the day, if you think it looks nice...
Well, I don't think it looks bad.
I don't think it looks bad, no. And, luckily, because it's fallen right at that point of the sort of top and bottom...
The change in green.
Yeah, the change in the green. It is
literally, as the green has come in full belt...
It's sort of in the centre point.
Yeah.
Then we could probably get away with it. But I really, really don't think you should rip back. But the moral of this tale is never, ever join in a new yarn without checking with me. Do you think that's the moral of the tale?
Well, the moral of the tale is for me to not make that mistake myself, because then I'm learning. So
that's the same moral of the tale.
The moral of the tale is to check the skein of yarn
But
against
the problem is, honey, like I've just said, you don't keep your ball bands. And if you kept your ball bands, you could have referenced it, couldn't you?
So what you're saying is keep the ball bands for the original colours?
Yes.
Or just write them down?
Or write them down, yeah.
That's probably the key to success.
What I do, if the colourway name is not listed on the ball band, if it's just a number, and I'm knitting something like that, I always write on the ball band grey or blue or whatever, so that I know which is which.
I think you might have written something on the pattern, actually.
Right.
So it was just a case of I should have checked the grey against.
Yeah.
I think it's a learning point, because I've never been in a situation before where I've had similar colours. Because otherwise I would have thought.
Because I've obviously bought you that for something else. I think I bought you that
for something old.
What's the other one that you're knitting?
No, it won't be that.
No, it won't be that.
It's an
Must
older.
have been a previous one.
It'll be an older project. So that is my Alexander. I've made the cataclysmic error of picking up a wrong grey and then putting it in. I thought it looked wrong yesterday, but hey ho. But I mean, to be honest, because of where it falls, I sort of feel fairly comfortable with it. So I think I'm just going to crack on and finish it. I'm not going to have a problem with wearing that. I don't think it looks...
It doesn't look bad, no.
Well, no.
It's just whether as a knitter you can live with that. But if it's fine, if you're fine with it, carry on.
Well, it's not like a huge, mess up in pattern, if I'd gone wrong on the actual design, I couldn't live with that.
No.
But I think when you're dealing with colour, and because it's not come halfway through, something major, because it's come right at a point where you could say, well, I wanted to do that. It was fading. I mean, it's very sort of fortunate, really. Very fortunate that it happened where it happened. Yeah,
if it like you say, if it had happened halfway through a pattern repeat, it would have looked dreadful, and you would have had to have ripped it back.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been disastrous, to be honest. So I see it as fate. I see it as, it's a bit like music. Where things go wrong, it's how you make it turn out right in the end. I remember once I was playing a drum solo. No, it wasn't a drum solo. It was. It was Don't Stop Me Now. And it was the drum bit in the middle. And I dropped a drumstick.
Oh, no.
So I just carried on with one stick. And people spoke about that for years after it happened.
Really?
Yeah. They were like, it was so cool where you threw down your drumstick. And you
they thought it was deliberate.
Yeah. And I caught my stick on my hi-hat. It had flown in the air, landed on the floor, and I just carried on with the other stick.
Amazing.
That is my Don't Stop Me Now moment. Oh, yes.
Dan's been doing loads of drum practice, haven't you, in the past sort of few months, really?
Yeah, I've decided I'm going to become the greatest drummer in the world.
Well, I think you're well on course to be. I was, because you always have a bit of practice when I'm in the shower at night time, and I come out of the shower and Dan will be drumming, and I said to you last night, it just sounded amazing. I can see a huge difference between now and sort of a few months ago.
It's very interesting as you get older.
Just practice, isn't it? Yeah.
Like anything with practice, but as you get older, I find that I'm able to attack my practicing in a way that's much more productive than it ever was when I was in my 20s. When I was younger, when I first started out, that was different because it's all new and, you're very productive then. I feel like I am as productive now as I was when I first sat down. And it's merely because I know what I need to do. For me, everybody's different at the end of the day, and you all need to do different things at different times. Half the battle, and this applies to all things that you do, knitting, whatever it might be, whatever skill it might be you're trying to master, you have to do what you can't do often. So if there's something that you're rubbish at, don't not do it. Do it and do it and do it. And what's been so cool for me is one of the things that's always been challenging for me are the more sort of Latin, Cuban, and it's Ricky Martin that's turned me on to this.
We love Ricky.
When I sat down, there was two things. When I sort of sat down, I thought, right, okay, I'm going to really start going at drumming again. I wanted to really nail the sort of Cuban Afro type stuff, and I also wanted to really nail the swing stuff. And the reason why I wanted to nail the swing stuff is because of after watching Whiplash. Which I wrote about actually in a recent Knitability. But look, That was my Alexander. Knit in Let Lopey. Added an extra colour I never expected. But who cares? It's Don't Stop Me Now. Kate Jones, what else is on your needles?
Right. My next thing is so close to being finished. It's not even true, but it's not finished. And it's one of my Christmas in July projects. I've finished one of them and I'll show you that later. But I haven't finished the other. And I could have finished this, but I didn't because I was knitting other things. That's the only reason. Yeah, sometimes that happens, doesn't it? But I'm so close to finishing now. And, you know, I'll have it done within the next day or two, I'm sure. But I'm on the bottom ribbing of my Christingle Mingle. So look. Look how lovely it is.
That's cool.
It is cool, isn't it? So this is the Christingle Mingle, which is a pattern of mine. It uses 6 mini skeins, 6 20-gram mini skeins. No, it doesn't. It uses 12. What am I talking about? It uses 12 20-gram mini skeins. And you have 6 speckled and 6 sort of solids or tonals. That's why I was saying 6. So it's 12 mini skeins altogether, 6 of kind of each. And I think it's lovely. I chose to do this one in this sort of gradient of peaches, I suppose, going into this deep kind of burgundy-ish sort of colour. I think it looks lovely. My favourite bit actually is the centre section where you do this. It's the point where you are mirroring. That's really hard to say. Mirroring. That word. The other side. So that's the kind of purpose of this centre section. It also breaks up and gives you a bit of interest and something different to do in the centre section. So you get to mingle 2 speckles, and I love how that looks. I would love to do some socks actually that are mingled like that, just striped using 2 speckled yarn. Speckled yarns. I think it just looks so lovely. So my solids are all Cascade Heritage. And then these are just speckles that I picked out of my stash. I couldn't even tell you really what they were. It just looks lovely. I'm on that. I think I've got. I'm halfway, I think, on the ribbing at the top now. You can't really see the pattern, but it mirrors this lovely lace and rib pattern at the bottom, and then you're just striping all the way through all these fun stripes. And I just love it. I think it's going to be a lovely one for the autumn to wear, because I think this sort of colour up next to my neck will be really nice. But then you can always swap things around and have the pale colour up as well to your neck. And I just love it. And the way that I alternate my yarns for this, because these sections here are sort of one row of one row of another. And if you look on the back, I've woven in my ends largely. There's just some up here that I haven't. And the seam is sort of here. You can see there's a bit of a jog. And what I do in those sections where it's alternating one row, is the yarn that I've just finished knitting with, I pull that to the front of my yarn, the front of my work. And then the one that I'm going to knit with, I take from what was the front, because it will have been at the front from last time, if you know what I mean, and I take that to the back and then I start knitting. And doing it that way means that you don't get that line of like that twisted, your yarn's twisted at the back where you're changing yarns. You don't get that, you don't see any of that, and I prefer that, I think. And I think it's also a little less restricting. It depends. You've got to be careful when you alternate still that you don't pull your yarns too tight. I think any technique where you're alternating like that, you've got to make sure you don't pull too tight, haven't you? But yeah, I enjoy doing it that way. I find it less fussy, having to remember which one's on top, which one's on bottom, kind of thing. So yeah, almost finished my Christingle Mingle. I will have it done and blocked and beautiful for next time, and then I can stash it away ready for cooler days in the autumn.
Oh yes, cooler days.
Cooler days in the autumn. I
just find myself, like, the last 45 minutes I've been daydreaming about snow.
It's boiling in here.
And cold baths. Although cold baths can be dangerous.
They can.
I think I did my I did.
Cold water, especially jumping into cold water as well, can be really dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of read things and you think, oh, I'll try that. And sports people...
Yeah, I mean, you've got to know what you're doing.
You do need to know what you're doing. And I'm sure I did something in my ankle when I did that. It's a while ago now that I did it. And then I got an injury for a bit and it took me a while to recover. And I think it tightened up too fast. Yeah. And that caused some sort of problem in my ankle. But my goodness, it's still nice to think about right now.
Yeah.
Well, ice down the back.
I know.
That never feels nice.
That never feels nice, no. I walked into town yesterday afternoon with Bryony. She wanted a few bits for sixth form, so I said, come on, let's have a walk into town. It was boiling hot, but I thought, let's do it, a bit of exercise. It was so hot, and we were walking into town, and I said to Bryony, oh, wouldn't you just love to jump into a pool right now? She's like, oh, yeah, I'd love to do that.
Or a fully air-conditioned house.
Or an air-conditioned house, yeah.
Bryony's, of course, our daughter, who is in the process of transitioning from fifth form / year 11, how stupid, into sixth form. How can you go from year 11 into sixth form?
They still call it sixth form.
Why don't they call it year 12
that's a
and year
throwback
13?
To when we used to have, first year, second year, third year, going up to fifth year.
Pick one way and stick with it.
And fifth year is what is now year 11. But when we were at school, it was fifth year. Yeah, so you finish your fifth year and you go into sixth form, and it makes sense.
Doesn't it?
Doesn't make sense now.
Not anymore.
I think they do call it sixth form, but then they also say year 12 and 13, don't they?
Yeah, collectively it's sixth form.
Yeah, it is sixth form.
Yeah, but collectively they call it sixth form, and then it's split into...
And everybody calls it
lower sixth and upper sixth.
Yeah.
Always worked fine before.
Did.
But yeah, she's about to transition, so she's getting all the clothes ready. But more importantly, the whole reason why I said this is we're sort of nervous about exam results.
Results day's coming up.
It's fairly soon.
Fairly soon. Yeah. So we're like,
hopefully she's not as stupid as me.
Let's hope so.
And hopefully she's definitely not as stupid as me.
Me.
It's my Hadrians Cowl, designed by Kay. And look at the ribbing on that. Now that's what I call...
Looks lovely.
Blooming lovely. Plain ribbing, you can keep it. Ribbing like that, it might take a bit more thought.
It's got like a little twist in it.
And a bit more effort, but it does look nice. And
the colours are lovely together.
Yeah, they're
I've got
beautiful.
To say.
They do go.
They're gorgeous.
Really well.
Who chose those?
Well, I'm rubbish at choosing colours, so you did. And it is the merino yak, which I've used loads of times now for colour work, and it works tremendously well. And I'm just sort of getting into the first.
Yeah, you can just see it's just started the colour work.
This is a temple, so that's got to be cool. So it's like the shape of a temple, the shape of a Roman temple.
Yeah.
And then there's loads of like cool sections to come as well, which is just going to be great.
It's lovely.
And what's been interesting already is going from one colour into the other colour, then back to the other colour with the... It's sort of different to anything I've done before. Normally, it would have gone that colour, then changed colour, then gone into the colour work without the change in colour. And actually, that's really fun. It makes it stand out, I think, a little bit more, and it'll make the temple, because it's the temple sort of footprint is
it's
in
like
this
the
colour
footprint
here.
yeah
it's cool.
It was inspired from when we've seen time teams, when they've been excavating a Roman temple, and you see it from up above, don't you? So it's that footprint, sort of diamond shape. It's a square effectively, but quite often it looks sort of more diamondy. Do they smell?
And I'm using 3.5mm Nipro Nova circulars.
They don't smell, I don't think.
There's only a slight hint of metal.
Nah, they don't smell.
There's just a tiny tang.
There is.
Unlike K's, which absolutely reek. Yes. Compared to K's, they don't smell at all. But yes, that's my Hadrians Cowl, and looking forward to getting further into this and seeing all the colour work
That's
appear.
lovely.
What else is on your needles?
Oh, well, this is a problematic thing. Well, it's not so much of a problem now, but because I had an initial problem, I don't know, it's just made me feel weird about it. So this is the pair of socks that I'm knitting for Dan. And if you remember last time, I'm knitting these socks using mini skeins of moustache yarn in her Star Wars colourways. Now, I started knitting an 8x1 rib. And I had a real problem. And I took a photo before I ripped it out. The problem I was having is it was looking horrible. After the purl stitch, that first knit stitch after the purl stitch looked really gappy and loose and horrible. I saw this was happening and I was like, I can't be having this. Why is this happening? Now, I did tons of research on this, on neatening up your ribs and neatening up knits to pearls, etc. I found loads of information about how to get your stitches neat when you're transitioning from a knit to a purl, but not really from a purl to a knit, because the impression I was getting is that there's not really an issue when you're transitioning from a purl to a knit. And it's all down to the amount of yarn that's in between those stitches. So when you transition from a knit to a purl, you've obviously got to bring your yarn forward. And by doing that, you're creating a little stretch of yarn. And if you don't do something to compensate for that extra bit of yarn, it can cause like a sort of gappy look, loose gappy look when you transition from a knit to a purl. When you're transitioning from a purl to a knit, you don't get that, because you know, your yarn's at the front, you take it to the back. And, you know, if you've done this yourself, you can look. It just doesn't produce that long strand of yarn. So there shouldn't be a problem, but I seem to have a problem with that first stitch after my purl stitch. And no matter what I tried lots of things to neaten it up. You know, like purling through the back loop, all sorts of stuff. And I just could not get it to look tidy, and I just couldn't bear it. So I've ripped it out and I'm just knitting a plain sock. But it's like just preying on my mind that I had this issue, and I don't know, it soured me against the project a little bit. But I didn't like, I was doing like a scrappy sort of look, so a certain number of rows in one yarn, then a certain number in another, and I just didn't like the way it looked. You can see, you will have seen on the photo as well, I just didn't like it very much. I thought it looked a bit ugly. The yarns individually are all lovely, but for whatever reason when I put them together I didn't like it. So what I ripped back to the rib, and what I decided to do was just use one mini. So per sock, use one mini for the cuff, heels and toes, and then the other mini for the body of the sock. So like on this one, I'm using the Lando inspired colourway for the cuff, the heel and what will be the toe, and then in between here it was that mysterious one which I think is Rogue One. I can't remember the name of it now, but it does this really pretty stripe thing. But the problem is I'm paused at this point, because the problem is I'm not sure I'll have enough of that yarn for the whole body of the sock, even though I'm doing cuffs, heels and toes in another, because Dan's socks are so long, and I've done a shorty sock and I've actually shortened it a bit more because I was worried about the yarn. It's just made me feel a bit funky about the whole project, so I've paused and I haven't picked this up for a few days because I needed to just think about it. And I don't know, I'm just not, for whatever reason, I'm just not loving it. And I said that about the last pair of socks that I tried knitting for Dan. So maybe I'm just not in a Dan sock zone right now. And you said to me...
That doesn't look like a sock that you've knitted.
Does it not?
No.
I wonder why. I have. Nobody else has knitted.
Well, yeah.
That doesn't look like I'm not finding it appealing. And what I've actually thought is maybe I will dye up some yarn, because I love knitting with my own hand-dyed yarn. So maybe I'll just dye up some yarn for you and knit a pair of socks with that.
Yeah, do that.
I don't know, find some new stitch pattern or something, just something to make it a bit different and a bit more interesting. Because this is just not, it's not doing it for me right now.
Yeah, I would ditch that one.
Yeah, and do something else.
Yeah, good idea.
So, yeah, I just wanted to tell you because of that mystery with the stitch, and if anybody knows what what it is, you know, that's causing that, you know, maybe it's because I've got that big run of knit stitches after the purl. So, you know, it's not the stitch before my purl that is my issue, it's the stitch after, because I'm aware of that issue between a knit, you know, when you've been knitting and then you purl, and I always, before I purl my first purl stitch, I give the yarn a little tug to sort of limit that extra bit of yarn, and that seems to work. But yeah, it's transitioning from that purl to a knit. But strangely, my 2x2 rib seems to be okay. I mean, that knit stitch maybe does look a bit bigger than the one next to it. I don't know. If anybody knows why that's happening, then please comment. That would be really helpful.
Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another episode of Kay's Yarn Dyeing Show.
Yes.
Now, many years ago, Kay was inspired to create a colourway that was itself inspired by one of our daughter Bryony's favourite characters from the Harry Potter series. And I can't remember his first name. All I can remember him is as Professor Snape.
Severus.
Thank you very much.
Isn't it? Severus Snape.
You are indeed correct.
Yeah.
For some reason, all I could think of was Professor Fate. And Professor Fate is a character from The Great Race. He's played by Jack Lemmon.
Oh, right, okay.
Have you ever seen The Great Race?
No, I'm not a Jack Lemmon fan.
Right.
I don't find him very funny. I know you do.
I mean, what are the films that I've watched with him in that?
I've seen it. I must have seen a couple because I do recall seeing him.
Isn't he in The Odd Couple?
Oh yeah, you see,
yeah.
I'm not keen on films like that, am I? I just don't find them very funny.
I love that film. They're both brilliant in that film. Walter Matthau's just superb.
Yeah, I mean they're both great actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did we get from Professor Snape to Jack Lemmon?
Jack Lemmon.
That's quite the transition. But look, yes, she created this absolutely amazing and totally not what you would expect from Kay colourway, inspired by Professor Fate, Professor Snape. And in today's wonderful show, she's going to share with you just that. But not only that, she's also going to share with you a gorgeous tonal, also inspired by Harry Potter 2. So I think I should shut up and we should sit back and watch the next episode of my favourite colourways.
Over the last 7 years, I have created hundreds of gorgeous colourways. Hidden away in my library is the little book that contains nearly all my secrets. These are the recipes for creating all of my colourways, and in this series I'll be showing you some of my absolute favourites. I'll be taking you from undyed skein to finished colourway, because it's time for us to discover Welcome everybody to another episode of my favourite colourways. It's very exciting today for a few reasons. It's always exciting, I think I always say that, don't I? But it is always exciting. But the reason it's exciting today is because we are now we're almost mid-August, aren't we? Yeah, almost mid-August. And my walks the last few mornings, I've really felt, although it's still really warm, there is that, I don't know if it's the sunlight or what it is, but there's definitely that slight hint of a feel of change of seasons, I think, now. We're into that sort of late summer season, aren't we, I would say now. It's given me those kind of tiny hints of autumn feel, which is always really lovely. There's loads of blackberries out. They seem to have become ripe really early this year. I feel like they've ripened really early. So it definitely has got that hint of autumn. And that just got me thinking about that coming season and the things that I enjoy doing in regards to knitting and, creating things. And I've also been watching, over the past sort of couple of weeks, the Harry Potter films. Not the later ones, I'm not so bothered about the later ones, but the sort of first three, maybe the fourth one, but certainly the first three I really enjoy. So my early mornings, I've been watching some Harry Potter, which has been really nice. And I've been putting those two things together, along with the fact that we're going to be running a really exciting sock-along through October this year. We're doing the Sock-a-ween. So those sort of three things together made me think of this particular colourway that I'm going to be dyeing today. We're going to be doing the main colourway, and then I'm also going to be doing a coordinating skein. And the coordinating skein actually it's a colour that I've dyed up a couple of times, but I'm pretty certain I never sold that particular colour. It's a tonal, but when I put the two together, I had some in my stash, just really old vintage stash of both of these colours, and I put them together and I thought, oh, that's just perfect, because it made me think of they're Harry Potter themed. I've given that away, so all of you Harry Potter fans out there, both of these colourways are Harry Potter themed. Also, it gave me the Halloween vibes, definitely, with the sort of colours that they are. And inevitably then that whole sort of autumnal season. So it's those three things together that influenced me this time. So the main colourway, again, I think, did I sell any of these? I'm not even sure. I think I must have, but maybe I didn't. I don't fully remember having these for sale, but maybe I did. If I did, there weren't many of them. But the colour, the main colour that I'm going to be dyeing up is inspired by Professor Snape. Now, Professor Snape is one of Bryony's favourite characters. She absolutely loves him. And what she loves about him is she loves the actor. First and foremost, I think she absolutely loves the actor who plays him. But also she loves his character, even though he appears initially, doesn't he, to be this sort of really grumpy, unpleasant sort of character. Underneath it, Bryony sees that actually she always sees him as a really nice person, and you know, when you know his background and everything, it sort of makes sense the way he is. So when I was creating this colourway, what I wanted to do was combine the kind of darker elements together with that underlying brightness and lightness, if you like, and it's those two together. So I called this colourway After All This Time. Harry Potter fans will understand that reference. And then the coordinating skein I've actually called Always, because those two sort of lines, if you like, references really go together really well. And actually the tonal colourway that I've called Always is bright and just gorgeous and rich, and they just seem to go together really well. So I've got my book with the recipes in. Next thing we need to do is have a look at everything else that we're going to need. Okay, so what are we going to need to dye up our lovely yarn today? So first of all, we're going to need the yarn, and I've got 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn here, because I'm going to be doing 1 skein of each. So if you wanted to do more than that, if you wanted to do 2 in each of your pots, then all you'd need to do is just double all the quantities of the dye that I'm going to be telling you. I like to do tonals, is fine. I can very happily do 2 in a pot, not a problem. And I can also do 2 in a pot of the other colours as well, variegated speckles, all fine. But sometimes doing 1 in a pot is a good thing, especially if you only need 1 skein. If you're just doing it for yourself and you just want 1 skein to knit a pair of socks, then I find just having 1 skein in there means that you know that all of the dye that you're putting in there is going on to that 1 skein. Because sometimes you find, even though there's only 2 skeins in a pot, you do sometimes find that more dye goes on one than the other. So there can be some differences from skein to skein. That's just all part of the process. But sometimes I do just like to dye 1 skein in a pot. So I'm going to be doing 1 skein of each. This is just fingering weight yarn, and this is a 85-15. So 85 superwash merino, 15 nylon. So I've got 2 skeins, and I've put them onto my little removable cable ties for ease of moving around. I've got my dye book with my recipe. I've got my mask, of course. And then we've got our plastic washing up bowl for soaking and for rinsing. I've got 2 stainless steel pots, 1 for each of the yarns today. These are the pots that I like to use. They're, like I said, they're stainless steel, just like the big casserole pots. And I like the 2 handles because they're easy to move around. And I only ever use these for dyeing. all of your equipment, remember, once you've used it for dyeing yarn, you must only ever use it for dyeing yarn. And then we've got our mordant. The mordant is the, I want to say chemical, I suppose it is a chemical, but this one's natural, it's citric acid. It's the substance that makes the dye permanently fixed to the yarn. I like using citric acid because it's non-toxic, it doesn't smell, it's easy to use and easy to get hold of. I've got my big mixing spoon, we're going to need that today, some old tea towels, and then we're going to use brushes and a measuring spoon today. So I've got my usual measuring spoon, which is a 1/8 of a teaspoon. So whenever I make reference to a teaspoon, if I'm using half a teaspoon or a full teaspoon, then the teaspoon I'm referring to is 1/8 of a teaspoon measure. And then I've got a load of paintbrushes. These are just cheap children's paintbrushes. Don't use expensive ones, just buy cheap ones from the pound shop, it's perfectly fine. And again, I just use these for dyeing. So I've got those, and then we've got the dyes. So for these two colourways, we're going to need 7 colours altogether, which is exciting, isn't it? Loads of colours. All of them except one are the jacquard. So I've got 6 jacquard and 1 dharma. So I will tell you again the name of the colour, the colourway number, colourway, it's not a colourway, is it? The dye number, and then what type of colour it is, so that you can swap out different brands if you need to do that. So first of all, we're going to need jet black. So this is jacquard, which is 639. So it's as it sounds, it's black. So, you know, if you can't get jacquard, you want a black dye. We've then got navy blue, which is 626 jacquard, and as that sounds, that is a deep navy blue. Continuing with jacquard, we've then got hot fuchsia, which is 620, and this is, again, as it's worded there, it's a really bright hot pink, hot fuchsia pink. Use this with care, is what I'm saying, because it is super bright. We've then got lilac, jacquard again, which is 612, lilac, which is very true to what it, you know, how it's described. It's that sort of pale lilac-y purple. We've then got sun yellow, which is 601. This is really intense, bright yellow, almost neon, I would say, but it's a super bright yellow. You can probably see in the bottom there. And then the last jacquard is turquoise, which is 624. Again, turquoise is as it sounds. I think you can get lots of sort of different brands will do that type of colour. And then the one dharma dye that I'm going to be using is sour apple, which is 471. And sour apple is one of my favourite greens. I'm funny with green dyes actually. I prefer creating my own green than using a straight green from a pot. I don't tend to like the greens very much straight from pots, which is why I prefer to mix them. But this one, sour apple from Dharma, I absolutely love. It looks, you know, the skin of a Granny Smith. That's what I think it looks like. So sour apple is our last dye colour. So that's all 7 dyes, that's everything else we need. So the first thing, as always, that we need to do is to soak our yarn. Okay, so in my bowl I've got some warm water and about a scoop of the citric acid. A scoop is, I think it's probably about a tablespoon, I don't know. This scoop came with the pot, so I don't know, it's probably a tablespoon or so, I would say, of citric acid in there. And I've not got very much water in there. I just try and use as little water as possible in the whole process. Water is really precious. So it's just, you know, I've not got very much in there because I've only got 2 skeins. You don't need a lot to soak it. It's nice and warm from the tap, so I'm just going to drop in the yarn and just push it down. I've got different gloves on today. I've been having issues with rubber gloves affecting my hands. So what I've been doing lately when I've been dyeing yarn is I've just been putting on these, you know, the sort of surgical, they're non-latex, hypoallergenic type gloves. And then when I'm moving the yarn around in the pot, I put rubber gloves on top of these just so that I can actually touch the hot yarn. Oh, I don't know, things you have to do. Aging hands. So I'm just pushing the yarn into the water there, and I'll just let this soak for a good half hour. You know, make yourself a cup of tea, get everything else ready just while this is having a little soak, and then we can move over to the stove and start the dyeing. Okay, so what I've got here is in my pot that's heating up, I've got water probably to about just less than half full, I would say, and I've dumped in another scoop of citric acid, so it's probably another tablespoon or so, and this is heating up, and I'm going to put my yarn into the pot, so one skein into that pot which is just heating up. I'll just go over and grab my skein and squidge it off. Give it a little shake, and then I'm going to drop it into the pot and just distribute. Oh, that's that word I can't ever say. I'm going to move the yarn around in the pot just to get as much yarn surface area on the top of the water as I can. So use the whole of the surface area of the water. If you find you've got a little gap where there's no yarn, pull it up from underneath. There we go, and you see it's all nicely on the surface. So I'm just going to let that heat up just for a couple of minutes. It is hot actually. When I put my hand in there, I can feel it is hot. And when it starts to, I mean, it is steaming now, so we're probably just a minute away, but as soon as it starts to get to that simmering point and it's nice and steamy, just turn the heat right down, just so that you're maintaining that heat, but we're not boiling it. I don't find it's necessary. I think as long as it is very hot, I just don't find you need to boil it. And I find that if you do boil it, I feel like that's not good for the fibres. You know, sometimes if I've had yarn in the water for a long time, there's a couple of my colourways, figgy pudding is one of them, where it has to stay in the water, the hot water, for quite a long time. The yarn can come out and it can be sort of a little bit fluffy. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just been in that hot water for such a long time. So I just like to keep sort of everything to a minimum, sort of smallest amount of water I can, least amount of time for the yarn to be in that hot water. As I've been talking, that is now steaming away. I can see there's a lot of steam rising, so we're probably at the right point now to put in the first colour. So I'm just going to notch the temperature down a little bit. Okay, so first colour that's going in, we're going to do the dark element first of all, and we're going straight in with jet black. And we want about half of a teaspoon. So you can see I've got about half of that teaspoon with the jet black. So I'm just going to move it over, and I'm just going to tap my spoon and sprinkle that over the whole of the surface. Now what happens with any colour that you drop on like this is that where that dye is initially hitting the yarn, you're going to get a very intense colour. But what I'm now going to do is just go in and just push it down a little bit. And what this will do is we will get those areas of intense black, but then we're going to get a nice softer grey going over the rest of the yarn. So just leave that for probably 2 minutes. I'm going to rinse off my black spoon in there as well, because there's quite a lot of black on there. Just give it a little rinse and then just dry it off. And before I do any moving of the yarn, I'm going to add in some navy blue as well. So this colourway, it is quite a lot different to anything I've dyed before, because we're using slightly different techniques. So I'm putting colours on top of colours. So you can see now, as it will very quickly absorb into the yarn, and you can see we've got very dark areas where that dye initially hit, but then we're getting lots of softer greys as well, which is just what we want. So I'm turning my heat right down now because it's very steamy. So now I'm going to go in with the navy blue, and I'm going to do the same thing. So get about half a teaspoon, and do the same thing. But what I'm going to try and do is go onto areas, sprinkle it onto areas where I didn't sprinkle the black. So just look for sort of gaps. There we go. Just rinse my spoon again. And then do the same thing with your big spoon. Just push that down. And what this will create is the sort of base colour of this yarn is a kind of, it's like a dark, inky, grey, yeah, a dark, inky, I say dark, but there are lighter areas as well. So I'm just going to leave it for just a minute or two, and then we're going to move it. I say move it, we're actually just going to turn it. We're not, because normally I move the sort of skein, don't I, on the cable tie, and we are going to be doing some of that, but for this second layer of colour, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip the skein, because I want to get that same effect over as much of the skein as possible. I'm only leaving it for a minute or two because I want those intense areas where I sprinkled the yarn, I want those to remain sort of intense if I can. So that's just had literally 2 minutes. So now I'm going to lift it and just turn it. And what you'll see is, as it comes out, can you see we've got lots of darker areas, but then also lots of lighter areas. And all I'm going to do, you can see there's a lot of dye still in the pot. That's absolutely fine. I'm just going to turn it, and what will now be underneath is that area that we just dyed. So just gently pull your yarn around like that, so that we've got as much of that area that we've just dyed is now on the bottom. So now we're going to repeat that process that we just did, so exactly the same, because we want to get some of those intense areas on both, you know, on the whole skein going around. So I'm going to go with the jet black first, about half again, and just sprinkle that over, and I'm going for these lighter patches primarily. There you go, a little rinse. And then I'm just going to push that down again, give it just a minute or two, and then go in with the navy. Okay, so get some of the navy, again about half a teaspoon, same again, just to get some of that lovely navy colour on the other side. And again, I'm using my little spoon to push it down. It doesn't make a difference actually whether you use your big spoon or your little measuring spoon. So that's the sort of first dark layer done. We just need to now leave that maybe a bit longer, 3-4 minutes maybe. Just leave it, and then we are then going to move the skein, and we're going to add in the pops of bright colour. Okay, so that's had just sort of 3 or 4 minutes just to let it set a little bit, and when I lift it out you'll see there will be colour in the pot. That will quickly disappear once we sort of move the yarn around. So what I'm going to do now is lift it up, and hopefully you'll see what we've now got is this lovely I would say mid-toned grey, greyish bluish, but with areas of darkness to it. And that's just exactly what we want at this stage. So what I'm going to do now is shift it on the cable tie. So just find the centre. And do make sure you've got sort of fairly heat-proof gloves on when you're doing this. There we go, that'll be fine. And you can see the water now it sort of looks purplish, I always think. But what I'm going to do as I move it in is just move your skein around like this, and that will help suck up the rest of that colour. And don't worry if there's still a little bit of colour left in the pot, that's fine. So now if I lift it up, can you see the difference with the colour in the pot? We've just got a very sort of pale, I don't know, looks a bit sort of pale purple. That's absolutely fine now. There's a little bit of residual in there, but not very much. So now drop your yarn back in and just move it around again, because now we're going to add in those pops of colour. And we're going to do this in a slightly different way to how I've done it before. So we're going to work in sequence through our 4 bright colours. So we're going to go turquoise, sour apple, hot fuchsia, yellow sun. But we're going to do it all one following the other. So we're sort of layering up those little pops of colour. So rather than sort of one colour moving, we're not doing that. We're going to do one bright colour, and just layer them on top. So I've got a little brush set up in front of each of my colours so that I don't get them mixed up. And I'm going to start with turquoise. And I like to sort of bring the dye over to the pot just to avoid too much dye powder flying around. Just get some dye powder on your brush and just tap like this in little areas, and you'll see it drop off. And it might initially not look like very much, but all we're aiming for with this colour is that as we're knitting it, you know, we might suddenly get a stitch that's bright blue, and then we might get a stitch that's bright pink, and then yellow and green. It's really fun to knit. So we just want little drops of colour, okay? And now move to the next one, which is sour apple. Same thing, but you know, going to look for different areas. If you go on the same patch of where you put blue, don't worry about it. You know, this is part of the joy of doing it this way. So just go over the surface, just drop in little mounds like that. When you think you've done enough, then move on to the next colour. So now it's hot fuchsia. Oh, be careful with this one, it's deadly. It's a really fine powder as well, this hot fuchsia. So just, oh, can you see it? Can you see it? You see, that was a bit much there, but we're going to go with it because there's nothing you can do once it's in. So just little specks. And if you are a bit heavy-handed like I was with that first one, don't worry. It's fine. There we go. And then lastly, the sun yellow. Again, just little. This one I find is more of a heavier powder. It's funny how each dye can feel sort of different. Like that hot fuchsia is really fine powder. This one's a bit heavier. So it's actually nice and quick to do this because you're just following one by another. And that's probably enough. So that's the first layer of sort of our pops of colour on. I'm just going to give that again, maybe just 2 or 3 minutes, because I do want that dye to give us an intense little hit of colour, but that actually does happen quite quickly. I'm just going to go in with my spoon. Can you see how that yellow's clumped a little bit? I'm just going to push it a tiny bit just to make sure it's gone onto the yarn. But yeah, we do want that intense hit of colour, but that does happen quite quickly. It will absorb in quite quickly. And then if when we move the skein around we get a little bit of mingling, that's absolutely fine. That's not a problem. So I'm going to give it just maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we're going to move the skein, and then we're just going to repeat the process, and then it will be done. Okay, so that's all of those 4 colours in. So yeah, crank up the heat, and when it starts to sort of properly simmer, I know that that's at the right temperature to set. I'm going to turn off the heat and then pop it outside to cool down. Okay, so that's our lovely, after all this time, dyed up and cooling away. So come back in part 2 when we are going to, first of all, we're going to dye up that coordinating tonal, and then we'll be rinsing them both and hanging them out to dry. So I will see you back soon.
My goodness, that was intense.
It was.
Wow. Do you know what? That is the most intense I think I've seen of any of my favourite colourways.
Really? What do you mean by intense?
There was, I think because you're dealing with dark colours,
Yeah.
you have to perhaps be a little bit more precise in what you're doing to end up with the superb end product, which we sort of got a glimpse of at the end.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, but you seem to be really sort of specific and precise in what you were doing on this one.
Yeah, I think it can be a bit scary working with super dark colours, you know, blacks and navies, which is what we were doing, because it can initially look terrifying when you put the dye in. The surface just looks, you know, black, and you're like, oh, this is just going to be like, I don't know what. But you've just got to go with it, you know, because it turns out, I think, beautiful.
Yeah, well, we got a glimpse at the end there, and my goodness, it is. I think that when you get something that you don't expect from something that you have an expectation from, I think that's the great thing. So you look at it, you think, oh, that's just going to be. Do you know what it's like? It's like the Galaxy Let Lopey.
Oh, it is. It is.
Do you remember the Galaxy that I used?
That is a great comparison.
What did I use that on? That was on the anniversary. So on the anniversary, the Galaxy from a distance or a quick glance, and you think, oh, that's just like black. And then you start looking, it's like, whoa. It's
got all these colours
That's
in it.
not black.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
It's like popping all over the place. I would say, actually, that this, I mean, you'll see it properly later on, this pops even more than the Galaxy.
Yeah,
But
probably.
that's such a lovely link, I think, because that
is.
Galaxy's probably my favourite of all the Let Lopies.
Yeah, I agree.
There's still so much to come though, because that gorgeous tonal is just like wow, and I have no idea what microstriping was. If you want to find out, tune in later on in the show and Kay will show you exactly what it is in part 2.
I don't think it will microstripe, and I'll explain to you actually when I show you why I don't think it will microstripe, but yeah.
Gorgeous. Right now, it's time for me to ask Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
Well, I've got 2 things, but one thing I'm not... if I show this now, it'll show the finished colourway knit up. So I'm not sure.
That's okay.
Is that okay?
No one minds.
Okay.
They'll be all the more inspired, because you've already finished that colourway anyway.
Yes, that's true. That is true. Yeah. But yeah, the first thing that I've got to show you are my finished Christmas in July socks.
These are superb.
I love these socks.
Look at that dye job. That is phenomenal.
The only thing I would say is there is a slight saturation difference. Can you see one of them? This one looks lighter than this one, which I'm not mad about, but I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely fine. So yeah, these are my Christmas in July socks that I knit during our knit along. And I did finish these well within the time scale. I finished them actually that same day I think we filmed last time, because I just loved knitting them so much. I just finished them that day, and I love this red. It actually, look! It's 49ers red.
Yeah. That's superb.
I'm a 49er today. So yeah, I love that red. So this yarn was from Molly at a Homespun House, and it was one of her holiday yarns from last year, and it was a sock set called Christmas at Hogwarts 2021, and that's my leftovers that I've got there. So loved the yarn. The base is gorgeous. Really enjoyed knitting with the yarn, and I've got a lovely pair of socks. Now I've just got to think about whether to keep these for me to wear on Christmas Day, or whether to keep them and give them to Bryony on Christmas Day, or just to give them to her. She didn't really need socks at the moment, to be fair.
No, so hang on to them for a minute.
I'm going to hang on to them.
Good idea.
And then just decide whether, because last year for Bryony I created her an advent calendar and she absolutely loved it. It was the most glamorous advent calendar ever, with like stationery things in and makeup, and there was a pair of socks within that as well, so maybe I'll save them for that if I haven't knit her another pair. But yeah, absolutely love knitting these socks, and I use my crunkled pattern within the body, and then I put in again my butterfly heel. The butterfly heel is in my lattice topped socks pattern, if that's something that interests you, and it's a mock short row heel, so it doesn't use short rows. I don't like short rows for whatever reason, I just don't. So this actually creates a heel that looks very similar to a short row heel. It's lovely and neat, which is what I really like, but there's no short rows. Beautiful. And then my umbrella toe, which is in the crunkled socks pattern.
And you finished something else too.
And I finished my wrist ticklers that I've been knitting through the dyeing series, my favourite colourways. So I've got the pair now.
And you go into some detail actually in the show. So
yeah, I do. So I mean, this was the first one that I knit. It's this way up. So this was Hubba Bubba. Can't remember what
I think you do all this in the show. So you're fine.
So this was the first one that I made.
Yes.
And this was the one that I've just finished. So this top yarn here is the
after all this time.
After all this time.
Amazing.
So you can see what Dan means. It's dark, but then if you look at it, you can see all those little pops of colour, can't you?
Purple and green and yellow.
Yeah.
A bit more green and some black and some light stuff.
It looks great. And yeah, I mean, I just loved knitting it because as you're knitting it, I think that's the thing with this. From a distance, you know, I'll show you when you hold the skein up. So from a distance, it might just read as a dark yarn.
Which it doesn't.
Oh, right, okay. But when you're actually knitting it, you know, there's a couple of stitches of pink there, there's green there, there's blue there, there's yellow there. And it just looks so lovely up close.
It's perfect.
It's a brilliant one for, you know, experiencing your yarn as you're knitting it. And I am someone who always looks at their work when they're knitting. I don't, not that I couldn't teach myself to. I just don't want to. I want to look I want to look at what I'm knitting. I can't understand why you would not want to look at what you're knitting, but you know, everyone's different.
That's the whole process, and which is weird because you regularly say that you're project driven, but what you're then now touching on is process driven.
Well, I suppose so. Yeah, that is true because I do enjoy yarn so much, and it is.
For me, it's all about the process.
Yeah, well for me, a lot of it. I've said this so many times, but a lot of the joy for me is the yarn, and just watching the yarn develop and seeing how it's going to knit up.
It doesn't need to be expensive yarn.
No.
Because as we've shown with Lope and so many other...
Of course not. It's not about the money.
No, because also as well, what was the one that I used for the Solia? That was lovely, all that yarn. There's so many, you know, good value yarns. So long as it is quality, made well, you know, with a good dye job, there's nothing better.
So there are my lovely sticklers all ready for the cold weather, which we're going to get, aren't we?
Look, to get closer to that cold weather, we need to go back to enjoy the next part of my favourite colourways, and that will get us.
And you haven't seen the tonal yet. I haven't showed you that yet.
No. Watching the second part of my favourite colourways will get us 20 minutes closer to autumn. So let's go watch and enjoy it right now.
Welcome back, everybody, to my favourite colourways. I hope you all went off and had a nice cup of tea in the break. So now it's time to dye up that tonal yarn, the Always colourway, and it's absolutely beautiful. In all honesty, I want to make a full pair of socks just out of this tonal colourway. It's so pretty and it's absolutely yummy. So let's get on and dye up that lovely tonal. Okay, so here we go with our Always tonal. So I've got about half a pot of water and another scoop of the citric acid into there, and that's just heating up. So whilst it's heating up, I'm going to put in my dye. So for this colour, I'm using lilac and I'm using hot fuchsia. So I'm going with the lilac first, and I'm going to put in about half of a teaspoon of the lilac. So about half a teaspoon, in it goes. I love dropping dye in. Look at that. Isn't that fun? Oh, doesn't it look beautiful? And then the hot fuchsia now. I'm a bit scared of this colour. But what I'm going to put in is, can you see how much that is? It's probably about a quarter of a teaspoon maybe. Not very much. And drop that in. because we can always add a bit more. So I'm just going to give that a mix. Now you can see the difference with the dyes. Can you see how the hot fuchsia just sits on the surface and the lilac just dropped in? They're all so different, so just give that a push and then give it a good stir. Can you see that colour? Oh my goodness, I hope you're seeing the colour that I'm seeing in that pot, because it's just so pretty and quite witchy. I feel like I'm sort of creating some kind of potion, which is very fun. I know the colour I'm looking for, so if it's not quite right, I will just tweak it and add a bit more dye. Always best to err on the side of caution initially, because we can add more. We obviously can't take it away. So a really good stir, because we are looking for a tonal. We don't really want specks of colour in this. So really good stir. And now we can drop our yarn in. Now, when we drop the yarn in, I'm going to actually try and deliberately create a colour that has two different tones in it. What I mean by that is there's a possibility that it might microstripe. It depends on your gauge, it depends on what you're knitting, but I do want to create two sort of distinct tones, and it's very easy to do. So grab your skein, a good squidge, and you will naturally get this when you dye yarn anyway, but we're just going to enhance it a little bit. What happens is when I drop my yarn in, the yarn that hits the dye first is going to be the most intense, and then as we move through the skein, it's going to be less intense because it will have sucked up more dye initially. So if I was to drop this in really quick, then that would produce a much more even tonal yarn. So if you want something a bit more even, drop it in really quick. If you want something that's got a bit more kind of interest maybe, and will have that slight chance of maybe doing a slight tonal microstripe if you do socks, for example, then all I'm going to do is, as I drop it in, I'm just going to take my time dropping it in. So just take your time. Just go slowly like this. And then get your big spoon and just help it drop in. Go slowly. And you can see it's absorbing dye down here, but we've not put this in yet. So you're naturally going to get less in that top portion of the skein. There we go, it's all in now. So I'm just going to hold it in there for a second like that. And now I am going to lift it up and give it a move and just drop it back in like that. And now I'm just going to move it all around. And I hope you can you see? I hope you can, but can you see this area here is much more purple than this area here? So it's just a tiny little tweak in what you're doing, but it will give us that more, I guess it's more of it's not really a variegated, but just a bit more interest to the skein. And I think because this is like a Halloween-y thing, I don't know, I just wanted to make it do something a bit more out of the norm than a yarn that I've dyed would do. See what I'm getting at? It needs to be brighter. I can tell that straight away. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to allow it to absorb this, and then I'm going to add in a bit more. It needs a bit more pink and maybe a little bit more lilac as well, because you might find as well different yarn bases, even if they're all fingering weight, you might find that like sparkling one dyes a bit differently to a non-sparkle, or a high twist dyes a bit different to a non-high twist. So can you see, if I hold it up like that, can you see how now this side is much more purple and this one's more of a lavender? So it's definitely worked, that little technique. But what I'm going to do now is move it a tiny bit like that, and I'm just going to hold it up out of the water and drop in a bit more dye. So I'm going to add in a bit of lilac and a bit more pink. Give that a stir, and then I'm just going to drop it back in. I think that will probably do the trick. What I always find as well is that the lilac seems to absorb really quick, and can you see how we've just got the pink? It looks like it's just the pink. The pink seems to take longer to absorb. So yeah, that looks better. So I'm just going to bring it up now to simmering point, and then I can just pop it outside to cool down with our other skein. Okay, so it's time to rinse our yarns now. So I'm going to start off with the dark one, and you can see in the pot here I've barely got any colour. It's just the merest sort of hint of colour, which is great. So I'm just going to squidge that out and drop it into my bowl where I've just got some warm water from the tap and a bit of wool wash. So I'm just going to give it a swirl around just to get rid of any little dye particles and also just that citric acid as well. And just squidge that around. Oh, it's such a lovely, but can you see, if I hold it close here, can you see the pops of colour that are in there? It's really lovely. So you've got this darkness, but then there's a bit of pink there, look. It's really lovely. So that's that one. And then let's do our Always. Drop that in. I'm using the same water, it'll be absolutely fine. Just give that a swirl around. And there's very little colour in that water. You do, because that hot fuchsia is really intense, you might find you do get a tiny bit in the rinsing water, but there's really barely anything at all in there, so that's brilliant. Squidge that. Oh, aren't they lovely? So now it's a lovely warm day today with a breeze, so I'm going to put it on the line, keep my fingers crossed we can get it nice and dry and fluffy today out in the fresh air. So here we go, our beautiful yarn is now dry, and it's so, oh, this colour is so lovely. It probably, as you're looking at it, it probably just reads as like a dark yarn. I don't think from a distance you might be able to see all these beautiful pops of colour, but I mean, maybe you can. It's just lovely, and that runs all the way through the skein. And then I love how you get these really intense areas of darkness, you know, where we dropped that dye directly on and we just left it for that minute or two. That's where you get these really dark areas, which is just lovely. And then is this not gorgeous? I mean, what colour do you think this is? I think it is a sort of bright violet. I think is how I describe it, a pinky sort of violet. And can you see the two different tones here? This is the more purpley where that hit the water first, and then this is the paler. So we just need to skein these up now. So let's start with the Always colour. Yeah, there's 3 ties on there. Let's find the tie that's holding everything together. So I'm just going to snip off one of these other ones. So let's go with this one here. And it just makes the skein neater, I think, if you've only got a couple of ties on there. And then just give it a little organise like that. Lovely, isn't it a beautiful colour? Oh, it's just gorgeous. Okay, so let's give this a little skein up. Seven. Oh, it's so lovely. I just love the two, the tones in there. It's just gorgeous. Well, we will take a closer look at these in a second. Let's just do this other one. Lovely. And you'll be able to see when we show you this a bit closer, but you can see all of those little pops of colour. Look at the yellow there. Just lovely. So there we go with our beautiful skeins. So after all this time and always, Bryony has already requested socks from these. So these will be Snappy socks for Bryony. And I think what I'll do is, I've got a full skein of this, so I could do cuffs, heels and toes with the Always, but I'll see what she wants. I'll see whether she just wants heels or if she wants heels, toes, cuffs. It's up to her. I don't mind. It's just gorgeous. I mean, it's not, you know, dark colours are not normally my thing at all, but for whatever reason, I just really love this. It knits up so prettily, because what I've already done, I dyed some more of this up a day or two ago, and I used that to knit knit the last colour into the wrist ticklers. So I've got a pair now. So it's this colour here. You might not be able to see all those little pops of colour, but honestly, close up, I can see all of those little specks of colour that we dropped in. And it's so nice to knit, because you'll just be knitting away and then you'll suddenly get a little pop of blue or a little pop of pink or yellow or the green. It's so fun to knit, so I can't wait to knit the socks. So that's the wrist ticklers all finished. I've done 6 colourways with you now. We started here with the Hubba Bubba, and we've finished here with, after all this time, Bryony likes this mitt better than this mitt. They kind of look like the 2 halves of the year, don't they? This is sort of spring and summer, and this is like autumn and winter. So I'll have to, because we've still got more episodes to come, so I'll have to think of something else to knit with the rest of the colourways that I'm going to dye up. So there we go, everybody. Get into your dye pots again, get dyeing up some Harry Potter themed yarn, put a film on, get yourself a cup of tea, and you know, if you want to knit up a pair of socks for Halloween or do whatever you want with them, you've got 2 skeins there, so you could do a stripy something, couldn't you, as well, if you wanted to. But just lovely. I hope you've enjoyed seeing that technique, and I hope you enjoy dyeing up your own yarn. So thank you everybody for joining me today, and I will see you again very soon for more My Favourite Colourways.
What an absolutely wonderful show. Oh my goodness, that tonal is just perfect.
What did you think?
And it's right there, isn't it?
It's right here. So I've actually got here 2 sets, because I dyed this up
a couple of times.
Yeah, a couple of times, because I loved it so much. I wanted to have more of it. So we've got here, it's on 2 different fingering bases as well. So I've got look at that.
Gorgeous.
Oh my goodness, is that not the most beautiful colour ever?
Yeah.
I suppose it is violet, I would say. It's like, it's just gorgeous. And you can see, I hope you can see if I hold it, you can see all of those little pops. Got pink, look down there, look at it down there. Just gorgeous. And then I've got another base, which is a bit more twisty, but it's equally as lovely.
But a bit different.
This one it came out a bit more purple. But you can see the 2 different tones here. You can see the pink here and more purple. I can't point there.
Yeah.
But the reason I don't think it will microstripe is because, first of all, I don't think the skein is long enough. Some skeins, aren't they? They're longer, if you know what I mean, the sort of circumference of them. This one it's a fairly short skein, really, so that's going to affect the length of yarn in each of the sort of tones, if you like. And also, because I added more dye in afterwards as well, that will have layered up the colours. So, but I do think, when I knit this up, I do think it's going to knit up absolutely gorgeous. Isn't it just the prettiest shade?
Can't wait to see.
I could wear a jumper in this colour. And then I've also got a mini as well. Just a little mini there. I just loved it so much.
And as we said earlier on in the show, just in case you didn't catch that, as Kay finished off that My Favourite Colourways. My Favourite Colourways, is back on the 9th of September for an extra run of 3 more shows.
So I think I'll just start another wrist tickler, because that's 3. I'll have 1 complete, won't I?
Perfect.
Maybe I'll do a pair. Yeah.
So as we say goodbye to My Favourite Colourways for another episode, that means next time we're back walking the wall. Yes. And it's an episode I've just been looking forward to all series, and I'll tell you why. As we've discovered in this series of Walking the Wall, people tend to head for the key places. They're not the key places, they're the places which society tells us is where we should go when we go to Hadrian's Wall. And we've been to those 2 places on the last walks. we went to Sycamore Gap last time, and before that we went to Housesteads, and those are always the most popular spots. But as we found out in the first 3 walks, and as we're going to find out in these next 2 walks, it's the places which are less well travelled, which actually have got some of the most sort of enigmatic and exciting and mysterious sights. And we're going to go to a place which I know Hadrian's Wall really well, and I've never before seen a spot which has got as many earthworks as this in it.
Wow.
There's so much evidence of Roman activity. It's going to be amazing to explore it, and we're doing that next time in the next episode of Walking the Wall. Right now, though, it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits,
everyone. Oh, yes. Prize draw time.
Yes. So, our Christmas in July knit-along is finished, and thank you to everybody that took part.
Yes.
There were so many of
Amazing.
you. So many. And that thread, if you want some inspiration for anything really, but particularly festive, then go and have a look in it, because there's just some fantastic projects. But the prize that I've got to actually allocate now is a set of my tinsel minis. If you remember, I dyed these up to knit my tinsel socks, and this is the exact yarn I used. So there's 6 minis, no there's not, there's 5. There's 5 mini skeins there in festive colours. And the winner we did on random number. It was from numbers 2 to 1,474.
Amazing.
Amazing. And the winner was number 436. And that is hooking number 4 fun on Ravelry.
Woohoo!
And that belongs to Elizabeth in Montana.
Woohoo!
Do you know, I don't know that I've ever posted anything to Montana.
Amazing.
I'm very excited to post something to Montana. What?
Let's see how long it takes her to get there.
Joe Montana.
Yes.
Joe Montana played for the 49ers.
It's like fate.
That's the main reason I'm wearing a 49ers top, because I love Joe Montana.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
He's amazing.
He's epic.
Yes.
Epic man.
Superb.
So yes, Elizabeth in Montana, these are yours. So if you would like to email us, address on the screen now, with your full name and your postal address, I will get these sent out straight away in the mail to you.
Amazing.
Well done, and thank you to everyone for taking part. It's been super fun.
Our Christmas in July, Cal, of course, forms part of our Summer of Stitching,
Yes.
which is still ongoing right now. There's also lots of events which have already taken place, which you can access, because it's all like exclusive special content with everything from our patron-only shows or exclusive Baker Bear patron-only shows, Summer of Stitching specials, to your Moonstruck Sock series, to your Time Sock series, to the Stitchy You, which is going on right now.
It is. It's been fantastic. It
really has.
Everybody's embroidery has been amazing.
The Stitchy You, it finishes on the 16th of August. So
nice. It's not long.
It's not long. I think
long to go.
There's 2 or 3
episodes,
lectures to go, and the final one is really cool, because the final one, Kay talks through how you could use your final piece.
Yes.
And also there's some links there to our bag making tutorials, if you want to go make a bag with it, but also lots of other ideas that you could do.
Yes.
So if you've enjoyed the Christmas in July, Cal, and you want more Summer of Stitching fun and access to more sort of community activities just like that, come and join us. Come and be a Baker Bear patron.
Yes.
You'll be helping keep the show on air, plus you'll be getting access to the majority, actually, of our content.
And we've got Sockaween coming up.
Exactly.
In October.
So you'll be able to get ready for Sockaween.
Yes.
Yes.
Very exciting.
We mentioned the Summer of Stitching. What happens when the Summer of Stitching finishes? Well, you are back on the 23rd of August with a review into the Lykeker.
I don't know how you say that. Lykee, is it?
The Likey Copper Circulars.
Oh yes.
Yes. If you want to find out what Kay thinks of those needles, and trust me, you do. Tune in on the 23rd of August. And also, the Self-Contained Knitter, my monthly show, is back after a summer break. But Summer of Stitching was so full of content, there's not been space for the Self-Contained Knitter. That's back on the 25th of August. And also, Kay's Design Diary is back on the 30th of August. And you don't want to miss that, because in that, she's going to be talking through the next platinum pattern release.
Yes.
And the next platinum pattern release is the day after that.
It
or
is.
Or is it?
30th of September. No, day after.
The day after the day after that.
2 days after, yeah.
Yeah, 2 days after.
1st of September.
Yes.
Yeah.
Folks, my goodness, what a show. It's been jam-packed from start to finish.
That's been super fun, and I really hope you dye up some of that yarn. I'd love to see it knit up. I didn't tell you, but Bryony wants a pair of socks, of course,
cool.
in her favourite Snape. So I'm going to be using this, I think, for Sockaween.
Cool. Exciting. Cool, folks, thank you so much for watching. It's been great to see you. Take care of yourselves.
Have a good 2 weeks.
Sorry for weeping.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But from now on...
It was happy in a way.
It's happy weeping.
Yeah,
because we're going to pick up the slack and we're going to shine like beacons of loveliness.
Yes.
Just like Olivia Newton-John used to be. Oh, yes. So thank you so much for watching, everyone.
Thank you,
and we'll see you next time for more.
See you soon.
Bye.
Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in